Hello, good afternoon. I'm Mary Fran Johnson. Welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm your host for our program. I'm the CEO of Mary Fran Johnson Media and a contributing columnist on CIO.com. Twice a month, we produce CIO Leadership Live with the generous support of my friends at CIO.com and the CIO Executive Council. We're streaming live to you right now on LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel, which is called Tech Talk. And we welcome all of our viewers who are watching along with us today to join in this conversation with questions of your own. We'll be watching for those questions and doing our best to pass them along to my esteemed guest, who today is Sastry Durvasula, who is the CIO, the Chief Information and Client Services Officer at TIAA. This Fortune 100 financial services company started out more than a century ago as the Teachers Insurance and Annuity Association of America. It was founded by Andrew Carnegie to build a sustainable retirement system for teachers. TIAA has grown into a $40 billion organization that is serving the financial needs of people who are out there doing good in the world at more than 15,000 institutions across academia, government, medicine, cultural, and other nonprofit organizations. Sastry joined TIAA in February of this year with an unusually broad CIO plus role. He leads the global technology and client services organizations for a company with $1.2 trillion in assets under management. He came to TIAA from his most recent post as Global Chief Technology and Digital Officer and Partner at McKinsey & Company, where he was leading the strategy and development of the firm's digital products and platforms, its client-facing technologies, and all of the data, cyber, and cloud organization. Prior to that, Sastry served in various digital, data, and Chief Information Officer roles at insurance broker Marsh McLennan, and before that at American Express. He is a longtime and passionate advocate for diversity and sustainability, and he serves today on the board of directors of Girls in Tech, which is a global nonprofit dedicated to eliminating the gender gap in technology. Sastry, welcome. It's so nice to have you with us today.
Thank you, Mary Fran. Pleasure is mine.
Let's start out at that macro level in basically taking advantage of all that experience you have had across insurance and financial services, and now the retirement and lifetime income segment of this vast industry. Talk a little bit about what you have been observing in the last few years about the big picture impact of all of this great uncertainty that we're living through now. I guess I'm after your helicopter view of some of the trends that you're seeing.
Yeah, I think, financial services obviously has been going through, as an industry, a level of transformation for the last decade plus, with the advent of new technologies and data and AI and digital disruption that we've seen. Obviously, I've had the front row seat to some of these big transformations that were happening, driven by fintech and big tech, in combination with large-scale financial services firms that I was fortunate to be part of, which pretty much every firm that I worked at was at least a 100-year-old company, except McKinsey, which is almost 100. Yeah. But large payment services firm, which is a 175-year-old, and a 150-plus-year-old insurance and risk firm with Marsh McLennan. So, I think the industry has been going through this transformation. Some of the companies that I had the opportunity to work at have been able to take advantage of this transformation, especially in payments that we've seen. What I would say now, at the stepping back and looking at it macro level, post-pandemic, every company is now going through this transformation.
It's interesting.
Right? So there's no more, I'm going to wait for my turn. I think everybody was literally forced into their turn.
Yeah.
I think every company is now going through this new normal, which is a great thing for the financial services industry largely. So
Yeah.
because there is a lot of movement that is client-centric, that is colleague-centric for firms. And obviously, that was the biggest draw for me to join, an iconic firm like TIA,
Yeah.
which is a purpose-driven firm that serves people who serve others. And that mission was a big draw for me. And as we think about the new normal, how do we empower our colleagues in serving our clients?
Yeah.
How do we create new experiences for our clients? And we serve generations of clients, right? So we have,
Right.
we have clients, as you pointed out in your introduction, we have clients that have been accumulating with us for their retirement. And we have clients who are retired and who are decumulating their savings for their living. So you think about the different generations that we have to serve and different experiences that we have to curate on one side. Thousands of institutions that we work with, whether they are higher ed or medical or research or nonprofit. And then, of course, on the asset management side, as you said, how do we invest, and to make the world better?
Yes.
So the $1.2 trillion, it's a great opportunity to be part of an iconic forum where we can make a difference and really drive the new normal and the new ways of engagement with our clients.
Yeah. Well, and of course, we have so many conversations these days, especially with CIOs, that start with all the how-tos and what you're doing in digital transformation, because that's kind of the catch-all power term that we've talked about in this industry, probably to the point where everybody's eyes are crossing a little bit because we talk about it so much. But whenever I talk with really large institutions and the CIOs there, and we start talking about the transformations underway, always in the back of my mind is that need to transform the core. And I know I've been to so many meetings over the years where you'd have CIOs talking about the latest projects they're doing, and it's all cool stuff and figuring out ways to connect with customers more digitally and so forth. But then there's always this lurking monstrosity of the technical debt. I heard one CIO one time describe it as an iceberg, and how the top of the iceberg can actually look beautiful and be covered with snow, and it has friendly penguins running around on it, but then underneath the water is the rest of it. And that, of course, are the mainframe systems. And the older the company, the more you have that core that has to be transformed along with everything. Tell us about essentially your mission statement for your strategy, because what I found so engaging about it was that you mentioned that transformation of the core right away.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? So my mission statement is a three-legged stool. So one leg of the stool is powering the strategic shifts of the business. So on the business front, we want to be a leader in providing lifetime income for all. We want to delight our clients, and we want to strengthen how we operate. So that has been the mission statement, especially with the arrival of the new CEO, Deshonda Brown Duckett, who joined last year. We've been on a path for the, loosely speaking, TIA 2.0. How do we serve our clients and our institutions through that? The second leg is fueling innovation. Obviously, technology is at the forefront of any business, and for our business, there's a lot of stuff that's going to change driven by technology in the new normal, as I just referenced. So that's the second leg. The third leg, which is the most complex and difficult and yet most fulfilling leg, is the transform the core while transforming the core. So to be honest, that's the beauty of a role like this, right? Where you're part of a 100-year-old firm that has been built through generations of technology. And so we have the most cutting edge technology on one side of the spectrum. Then we have data centers and legacy systems and large mainframes still running in the back end. And how do we transform that core to drive forward the vision and the experiences and the innovation? So that's a big focus. We have a company-wide technology ecosystem transformation initiative that's underway, which is sponsored by the board. So it's a big priority for the firm, and we are obviously trying to lift the platform at the core while we run a two-speed lane to drive the innovation and experiences so that it's a sustainable change.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the experiences and innovation, for them to live longer, they need a stronger core.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and put into perspective for our audience, either listening to us on the podcast or maybe tuning in and watching, what it means to be the combined role of CIO plus chief of the client services organization. That usually would fall under another senior member of the executive team, but you've got both roles. So how does that work together for you?
Yeah, I think I would say to the audience and my friends in the industry who are watching this, who are CIOs or who are going to be CIOs, this is the best time to be in the industry as a technology leader, because especially in the new normal, the roles and the horizons for the CIO are changing. So my role is a classic example of that. So obviously I had the privilege to do that in my prior roles as well, leading digital and technology, or data and AI and technology, or data and digital and AI. So I had different combinations.
Quite a long list, actually.
Coming here, so it obviously is quite a tool set that I have with me. But here I have the opportunity to lead technology and all of the client services. So together, this function that I lead as an enterprise shared service for the firm is close to 60% of our colleagues in the company. And client services colleagues take a call from the client, a participant, all the way to managing complaints and financial crimes and fraud management, to a lot of the middle office and the back office operations. So if you think about it, the opportunity there to enrich the conversation with the client, to delight the experience for the client, to handle some of these complaints through automation, to drive intelligent automation in the back end, every one of those things would need technology. So it's nice to have the technology organization that's going to drive this, and we can literally test and learn on the client services side, where we can actually put that into action. And a great example is the partnership that we recently launched with Google in the AI space, where my technology organization obviously built the capabilities, and my data team worked with Google on the data science part. But then we're able to put that experience in the hands of our colleagues that are serving the clients as the call comes in, or as complaints come in. How do we actually address those complaints at much different space and speed, and also some of the natural language processing insights that we're providing to our colleagues on their desktop, so that they can actually have a meaningful conversation with our participants. I think some of that really comes to real life. The proximity advantage in our global locations, where technology and our client services colleagues coexist, is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, and when you say you've got essentially your clients internally in the areas of technology and client services, that's 60% of the people that are working for
my colleagues. Yes.
Now. Yes. That makes me wonder too. You'd mentioned that most of the business innovation has to come from eventually changing the technology underneath. Talk a little bit about how you have the technology and client service, the kind of changes maybe that you've made in not even quite a full year yet, but the sort of things. How do you organize the technology and client services functions to take maximum advantage of that and the things that need to get done going forward?
Yeah, so we did, we started with the strategy, and then we put our strategy on a page, and then from there we created the operating model, and then we created the organizational structure in that sequence since my arrival. So the technology organization has three components. So one component is our, what I would call the business facing CIOs. So largely, we have retirement services, which is the largest business unit. Asset management, as you referenced, it's $1.2 trillion of assets under management in our Nuveen business. And then we have wealth and other businesses that we have. So I have CIOs on my leadership team that face off to the CEOs of these respective business units.
Sure.
Then I have the shared services organization, where we have information security, cloud and infrastructure, data and artificial intelligence, and partnerships. So those are the roles that we have. They cut across all the business lines. And then we have a global business services organization that has the global locations that actually works with all these different units as well to create the scale and horsepower in the back end. So I think, that's how we manage the structure. On the client services side, we have a similar model. So we have client services leaders that are responsible for doing the same for the respective business units, and they work very closely with the CIOs and the technology shared services team. We have, in addition to that, we have an innovation arm called Client Tech Labs.
Yes.
And that is like the fuel for innovation. So all of these different teams have access to the Client Tech Labs, and we've opened that labs to all of our colleagues now. It's a cloud-based labs, the multi-cloud environment. And that's where a lot of the incubation ideas. So if any colleague in our organization can submit an idea, and then that idea could be consumed through innovation projects in the lab. So that's kind of the, broadly speaking, that's what we've organized.
Well, and I want to, before we wrap up today, I want to make sure that we dive into that a little bit more, because you have a number of things going on just in the talent area that are very, are very engaging about how you are keeping people and upskilling and that sort of thing. But right now, I wanted to, before we get to that, I wanted to pivot into something you said when we were preparing for this interview, was that there are these big tech innovations that are happening right now, kind of in front of us. But I had never heard the term retire tech or silver tech. Yeah. So I've heard fintech, and we hear about all the different techs that are disrupting different parts of the financial services industry. What is happening that's disruptive in retire tech? Is it simply the vast span of age groups that your company deals with? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so retire tech, just for definition's sake, as I said before, retire tech is largely speaking technology, fintech companies that are focused on the accumulation side. So how easy do we make it to accumulate, how intelligent it is, how intuitive it is, in today's world, and serving like different generations as they make those decisions. And then silver tech is on the decumulating side, where you're actually leveraging those savings. Then there's wealth tech, which is more on the advisory side of the house, and like wealth management, because wealth management is a big focus area for us. Of course, on the asset management side, we have other activities happening with climate tech, et cetera, because we have a huge focus on ESG. But so retire tech and silver tech are still, like, I would say, emerging fintech. It's not like payment tech that I was part of, or insure tech that I had a chance to be part of before coming here. So it's still forming. So it's a great advantage point for TIA to lead from the front as we lead in lifetime income and leverage best of breed ecosystem strategies in doing so. But if you ask me, the focus of retire tech today, which is evolving. So and I'm not going to suggest that is like a set in stone focus, but
it's not.
If you look at the different generations, right? So we've got like younger generation who normally doesn't think about retirement. How do we leverage retire tech to make it easy for them? They're obviously all comfortable with fintech in other formats, right? So whether it's financial services with whom they bank, how they tap their card, and all that stuff. So how do we bring that intuition into retirement so that they can actually start leveraging, their savings towards retirement? Part of it, obviously, because retirement is not something that you visit every day. So the other disadvantage we have by just the nature of the industry is it's not a daily conversation we have, right? So which makes every conversation that we have with our participants far more important and far more valuable. So we need to really drive that experience to a point where we leverage the maximum out of that conversation or interaction we have with the participants. So that's a big focus for us. So on the experience front, we've just recently hired a chief digital and client experience officer, Jessica Parker. And so she's a colleague of mine, and we're focused very heavily on driving that level of experience so that we can engage with different generations. But you switch to silver tech, how easy is it to get access to that? And like standard things like money in and money out transactions, how many clicks can we reduce so that people can easily access that? And if they have inquiries, how can we assist them? Because they may not have the same technical capabilities that the younger generation has. So we need to serve, the different generations. So that's more focus of the Silver Tech.
Yes.
So we're really excited actually to be the incubator for some of this, and be embodying some of this into our own solutions and capabilities.
Mhm.
Wealth is far more mature. Obviously, there's a wealth management business. But
Sure.
wealth tech, I think, is a lot more advanced. So we're definitely tapping into that side as well.
Are there any particular technologies out there that are essentially accelerating all of this much more? I mean, causing it to be something that everybody needs to get on board with and catch up with very quickly. Is it AI, the use of AI and machine learning? Is it multi-cloud environments? Is there any technology that you as the CIO with this very broad role are paying more particular attention to now than maybe you needed to a couple of years ago?
I think AI ML is undoubtedly the most advanced mainstream topic that we are actively leveraging.
Okay.
I'm excited that I have a chief data and AI officer who joined my leadership team, Swati Singh, who herself is a PhD in machine learning, who has extensive experience in data and AI. So we're working very actively on that. And I think personalization, because I'm referencing my different generations and different types of participants and institutions that we work with.
Mhm.
How do we personalize the experience for those participants? How do we personalize the experience for our colleagues who are serving those clients and participants through AI? How do we create insights for our colleagues to best serve their customers in this case? How do we personalize the experiences on the digital channels? So a lot of that is being driven by AI. Google partnership I referenced is one major step in that direction, but we have a lot of exciting work that's happening on the AI ML front. But besides AI ML, I would say there are a number of other technologies. Obviously, as we get into quantum and Web3 and the advancements that's happening in the industry, undoubtedly will yield new benefits to our clients and new ways of enriching those experiences and capabilities. So we are actively watching that in our incubation side of the house, which is the Client Tech Labs that I referenced.
Yes.
And generally speaking, mobile and digital technology that hasn't been really embraced in retirement services to the extent possible, unlike other parts of the financial services industry. We are obviously very actively focused on that. I think that's almost table stakes, but retirement services as an industry needs to get into more mainstream on that as well.
All right, that makes sense. I want to dive into the Client Tech Labs a little more deeply. That is because that is something you have initiated since you joined TIAA. All right, tell us about that, about what the Client Tech Lab, what does it mean? Is that like having a customer, how you have those big companies tend to have the customer technology innovation centers where people can come in and see all the cool things you're doing, maybe with advanced tech. This sounded like something a little more company-wide, where you have a lot of different folks involved in it. So tell us about the Client Tech Labs and what they're meant to do and how they're organized.
The Client Tech Labs has client front and center, technology, and labs for incubation. So and hence the name Client Tech Lab. So we're focused on a few things on that. So one is collaboration with our clients. The advantage of TIAA's clients that we serve is that we have access to the higher ed, the who's who of education in the industry, right? So how do we work with our clients and collaborate on new ways of enriching the experiences for our primary customer base, which is the participants who work in these universities, who could be professors, who could be researchers, who could be administrative staff. How do we enrich their experiences in partnership with clients and their students and faculty, et cetera? So there is obviously a number of opportunities there to serve our clients with our clients, through those innovations and collaborations. So that's one side of the house. Emerging tech, everything that we've discussed so far, how do we actually incubate those technologies? How do we build new capabilities in the labs environment is obviously another big focus for us. And then fintech partnerships that we just discussed. How do we build partnerships with fintechs in this environment is another big focus. And then the last one is really industry and academia partnerships. So we are pretty active in the industry. As an example, in the cyberspace, we are active with RAN-ISAC, which is Research and Educational Network Cyber Consortium. FS-ISAC, Financial Services Cyber Consortium in the industry. So we're pretty active there. Academia, we are working with a number of universities in terms of research partnerships. As an example, we have NYU Tandon School of Engineering. We have a partnership there where we can send our colleagues to get graduate level degrees in cyber, which is obviously a hot market, right? So, so right now we have like 70 colleagues who are going to be graduating with cyber, grad degrees from NYU, from various disciplines that they have been, experienced in, but they're going through this program with NYU. So, so academia partnerships is a big one. And then lastly, we also use this for partnerships with nonprofits to bring in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have partnerships with Girls in Tech, Society of Women Engineers, Blacks in Tech, where we're actually conducting next month in their huge conference, we are conducting an AI workshop sponsored by Clientech Labs. So it's a combination of these various partnerships that are coming in. We are still in the early stages, I would say. I think the early wins are pretty good, but I'm really excited about the opportunities in front of us.
Well, it was interesting too that you said in that graduate program in cyber, these are not just people out of the cybersecurity organization itself that are advancing their skills. You're bringing them in from other parts of the technology organization, also client services, that organization as well.
That's right. Yeah. So if you are a client services professional who has been, let's say, handling financial crimes and fraud, so who has an acumen in that space, you always wanted to leverage your skill set from an industry, but advance the technical skills. We have an option for you at this point. Yeah.
That's great. Now, when you, and you also have a new executive on your teams who is handling, essentially forging all these partnerships with outside industry leaders. That is a role you created when you got to TIAA?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So we call this, so Taisha Smith, who's on my leadership team, she leads this organization. We call it Tech Pact, Partnerships, Acceleration, and Cultural Transformation. So she has been in the forefront of a lot of these partnerships now. And we just were part of the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth Hackathon. We sponsored it through our Clientech Labs this past weekend, actually. We ran a big hackathon with all of our interns. We had over 96 interns that went through the Clientech Labs partnership, where they actually came up with ideas that got recognition. And then these are coming from 50 different universities.
Wow.
50 different universities in the United States that were part of this hackathon in Clientech Labs. So I think, we're beginning to see a lot of energy and momentum on this, and Taisha is in the forefront of that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, and I know Dallas is one of the areas where you have new offices and you've opened hiring down there as well. Because
that's right, in Frisco. Yeah, we are opening up and we're going to add 2,000 more jobs there. So quite excited actually about the opportunities to attract more talent in the Dallas area.
Yeah. Now, when I think of all the different companies you've worked at Amex and at Marsh, and then of course with McKinsey, have you, wherever you go, do you always end up gathering all of these different type of resources throughout the company for this, or do you have more of that going on now at TIAA?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question, because the companies that you mentioned before TIAA, they're all global companies, right? So the advantage we have in TI, we are equally global. So we have asset management business that's global. We have a global business services that has large campuses in India and elsewhere. So what we are trying to do is we've opened a guild network, TIAA-wide guild network that is accessible for different disciplines. Cyber, we just talked about it, but there is like AI, there's other areas where the guilds can collaborate. And it doesn't matter where the colleague is from, they could be participating in a guild, and more for learning, certifications, etc. But we are now beginning to take the next big step on our guild network, and we are calling it Guild Gigs. So you could be measuring in on any role, like I could be a client services associate, managing risk, and now I want to learn the latest in AI, and I could be doing minor role in a gig as part of the guild, so that way over time in addition to like learning through theory and through practice, this is actually on-the-job learning. So that's what Guild Gigs are about. So we're just beginning to launch Guild Gigs. So hopefully by the time we talk next, I'll have more stories to tell on how that's panning. But
Right.
I'm quite excited about, what we're doing with the Guild networks and Guild Gigs. Yeah.
That seems like a great, just from the outside, that seems like a very good talent retention move as well.
That's right.
Because people can suddenly see, employees can suddenly see career paths opening up into other areas.
Yeah.
It's early enough in it that you haven't started to see that kind of movement yet, but you expect to.
We're excited. I mean, cyber has obviously started a little bit of that. So we're seeing some movement there, but the leaders that we are able to attract now, I'm quite excited about the possibilities ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and you've mentioned Google as one of your new industry partnerships, especially in the AI area. Are there any other big partners that you want to mention at this point, or are they still kind of in the works where you're figuring out the details?
They're in the works, but I think as a theatrical trailer, I will say that there is obviously a lot of focus on our technology transformation, as I referenced earlier, with a cloud-first, API-driven, data-powered, digital-first, secure by design. That's our approach. So you can imagine all the players in those respective spaces that we might be actively working with. So I'm quite excited about the possibilities ahead. But yes, absolutely, that's one area. And then, of course, fintech partnerships, as I referenced earlier, in retire tech and silver tech is another big focus area for us as we think about our agenda ahead.
Yeah. And are you finding with these sorts of opportunities for younger technologists to grow in their careers, are you finding, is it difficult at all to get talent interested in retirement planning? Because I mean, as you said, when you're in your 20s, this seems like, well, it seems like 40 or 50 years from now. So how do you get around that? The fact that you're trying to get young, really leading talent at a company that is talking about retirement and silver tech. Is that any kind of a challenge, or?
I mean, it is. So technology talent in any industry is a challenge, right? Right now, there's a lot of demand for, especially in the new normal that we live in post-pandemic. And then industries like financial services are on the receiving end of the challenge more than others. And then, as you rightfully say, retirement is not front and center. We are not talking retail, or we are not talking a payments product. So, but the differentiation that TIA has, which very few companies can actually proudly talk about, is we are a Fortune 100 company that is born for purpose. Everything that we do is purpose driven, right? So all the profits we make, we're giving to the participants at the end of the day. So it's, so especially if you think about the next generation talent who are fascinated by purpose and serving others.
Yes,
we have a very compelling story to tell as a brand. And if so, my pitch always is, do you want to come work for a real purpose-driven Fortune 100 and make it cool, and make the experience cool? That's a pretty cool gig to have, and I'm excited. I'm here, and my leadership team is here. So, I think it's a very unique value proposition. So obviously, technology in a technology company is very different. But doing technology and cool things in a company that is basically born out of a purpose, as you said, in Andrew Carnegie's own words, like 100+ years ago.
Yes.
And taking it to the next level. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, I think probably my mother was a kindergarten teacher. And so one of the very first insurance companies I was ever really aware of, or retirement planning companies, was TIAA.
That's awesome.
I think about all of the people that we know that have mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and brothers who have gone into the teaching professions. And I think it's certainly smart to be expanding, to have expanded into nonprofits. And it's a very appealing concept, I guess.
It is. And if I may just add one more comment on that, my friend. We just launched a major initiative called Retire Inequality. So it's proven statistically that women retire with 30% less.
Yes.
So we have a large focus on this. We have a very diverse executive committee for the firm, and this is a big focus. So now think about solutions and capabilities to bridge that gap. and how do we create personalized experiences to bridge that gap for women in their retirement planning. So that's, as part of our purpose, just expanded purpose, right? To provide retirement for all. That's our agenda at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is I wish you great luck with that. That is a very noble agenda indeed. I want to pivot over to talk, just to get a little techie for a moment. I have read interviews with you and things you've said even throughout your career about intelligent automation and the importance of driving intelligent automation across the enterprise.
Yeah.
How are you able to do that? And has it been more effective for you in this expanded CIO and client services role?
Yeah, it's definitely, because I'm on the giving and receiving end of the spectrum, right? So the more intelligent automation that I can drive in technology, the better my client services colleagues will be equipped with. So there is an automatic gift exchange between the two hats that I have. But intelligent automation in a firm of our size and complexity, like we have different vintages of contracts over the last many decades, right? So that we have to think about as we think about intelligent automation. So that's where we're focused on the front office and the middle office and the back office functions. We have a pretty big roadmap, even to the core of our record keeping. Record keeping is it's like one of the foundational bricks of retirement services. So we're focused on that, in transforming that as well through automation and other means. So as we drive more of this automation, we want to bring the best experiences to our colleagues so that they can serve the clients better. So Google is one of those experiences, obviously, that we're leveraging to build the intelligent automation. But there's a lot of RPA, pipelines that we're building, even to the developers that are actually building. We're trying to drive as much of CI/CD automation in our developer experience, because developer experience is as important as client experience in this current construct of new normal, right? So the more our developers can move fast and experiment fast and build these capabilities through agile development, the better our experiences for our participants or our institutions would be. So there is an intelligent automation set of work streams across colleagues, developers, specifically data scientists, as well as obviously end clients and participants. Yeah.
Have there been any examples of a big early success you can point to with that? Something where, say, the CEO calls you aside and says, Sastry, what you've talked a lot about intelligent automation. What do you have what are the results? Do you have something like that you can talk about today?
Yeah, I think one example I can share more publicly is from a participant point of view, when they call in with the intelligent automation that we've now put together through chatbots and automation, that a lot of the requests that, as a participant, and you explained, your mother about her insurance. So when you call, and if you're on hold to actually get to a customer's, service rep, and then you go through the inquiry, that's a lot of time spent by our participants. So we have now taken a deep analytics on different calls we've gotten. And then we've gotten to a point where we know the call intents, the top call intents, and we're starting to put intelligent automation to the top 10 call intents. So when you actually call in, you could be serviced through automation, even if you choose to stay on the phone. Of course, we always try to prompt our participants to go to the digital experience, but if you choose to stay on the phone, it could be served more automation driven solutions versus waiting for a client service representative to talk to the participants. So that's a great example of reducing the friction points in our client touch points.
Now, is that something that your chief digital client experience officer, is that part of her remit, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the way we work is she obviously has digital channels, but also the end-to-end client experience. So Jessica Austin Barker, she's thinking through the different journeys. And then obviously my team works very closely hand in glove to drive automation through some of these prioritized journeys so that we can drive it forward together. Yeah.
Okay. I want to pivot again over to your role as a board on the board of directors for Girls in Tech. Is that the only board that you serve on currently?
Yeah, that's the board that I serve on at a global scale as a nonprofit. So I'm really proud of it. I've had the privileged to be part of it from its early days and working with the founder and the CEO, Adriana Gascone, and when it was a few thousand people, now it's 100,000 active members across 50 chapters around the globe. And it's an honor to serve Girls in Tech as a board member. Yeah.
Well, and give us some perspective on what Girls in Tech has been able to accomplish so far and where you'd like to see things maybe 3 to 5 years from now. What would you consider as a as one of the directors, what would be a real mark of success?
Yeah, I think the main goal obviously is to reduce the gender gap or eliminate the gender gap, which is our ambition. And that's done through empowerment. So there is a lot of work that happens through Girls in Tech where we create mentoring networks. I'm an active mentor, by the way, for a lot of mentees in the industry, different industries, different age groups, different parts of, their jobs and careers, whether they are technical or non-technical. So we've created a level of mentoring networks and a dialogue that happens. There's a lot of empowerment through education. So, we've done a lot of workshops, master classes to teach. We've created job postings, set of tools where people who are members of Girls in Tech can actively, seek opportunities, and then employers are coming in to put their jobs, as an example. So that's on one side of the spectrum. The second is advanced research. So we've done a lot of work in research. In fact, in my prior role, there was actually a research study was sponsored by McKinsey and Girls in Tech, where, how do we get to the bottom of some of these core fundamental issues that we have? And then, of course, the third is really empowering, innovators to incubate new ideas and come up with, businesses, opportunities, et cetera, and creating the network. So we have a lot of work to do. And I'm really proud, to be an ally in this space. And I think the male allyship is playing an important role as I see it now. So I see a lot of my, peers in the industry leaning in more. So I think together we can make a big difference.
Good. I often ask a question at this point about the most strategic tech and business priorities you have going into the rest of 22 and then into 23, but wondering whether anything has shifted up or down on your list. Because it may be a little unfair. You haven't even put in a full year there yet. And of course, we've talked about all the business transformation at scale, about powering the digital business, about leveraging data and AI. Is there anything that in this new normal, as we're all adjusting to it, that has kind of risen up higher than you might have thought a year ago?
I think, as I said, the business strategy that we have for TIA, I always go back to that as my North Star, which is lead in lifetime income, delight our clients, and strengthen how we operate. So the shifts that we are making are within those three respective pillars. So if I think about leading lifetime income, we are branching into new solutions. We've always operated in the 403B market for higher education. Now we're getting into 401k market, where we are coming up with new products for secure retirement. And we call that the SIA product, where we are launching new products in that space. So that's the new shift. Digital experience, especially in the post-pandemic new normal, different phrases used to describe the world that we live in now.
Right.
Digital experiences and delighting our clients to that, and creating personalized experiences through data and AI have obviously risen to the top of the list on that front. And there is a lot of focus on the experiences, whether it's web or mobile or client services, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a huge priority. And needless to say, in the post-pandemic world, we're also testing the limits of the core, right? So the acceleration on the core transformation is happening. So it probably was happening in a more gradual style. Now we have a concerted approach to it. Like, let's get this done, through a multi-year journey. It's a large undertaking, obviously, to drive technology ecosystem transformation for a company of our size and heritage, but that has definitely risen to the top. Plus, of course, cyber threat landscape has changed extensively, and we are very, very, vigilant and diligent on the cyber capabilities. I have a new chief information security officer who has extreme credentials from the industry. Comes from Silicon Valley background, working for large financial services firms, Pendra Mardikar. So I'm quite excited to have him on my leadership team as we drive forward the cyber agenda. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that having it part of your mission statement to transform the core certainly implies that you're accelerating that a bit more. You're pressing, because every CIO in any industry will talk about the need to reduce technical debt. But I often wonder whether that is going to be simply a never-ending issue that goes into the future. No one ever seems to get to ground zero with it. It might not even be desirable to do that because it would be so expensive. What are kind of the pillars of the signs of success that you're transforming the right parts of the core for TIAA?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? So technical debt will never go away. It's kind of like, our phones are always upgrading to the next operating system. And if you don't upgrade it, then you have technical debt on your own personal phone, as an example, right? Same thing with computers that we are operating and working every day in our own personal world. So I think that will continue to happen. The difference here is some of the firms, like especially, a Fortune 100 of our scale, has a lot more to deal with. So we do need to leapfrog. So the goal is really to leapfrog in some of these technology layers. So we have a layer cake for our technology ecosystem, and we are prioritizing the top 20 initiatives across these different layers so that we could cut across whether it's going to cloud or microservices and API enablement or digital experiences through design studios or an enterprise-wide data platform. So some of these things are, I think, foundational to the future. And so that's where we're going to put a lot more energy to leapfrog. As you rightfully say, we will never be able to get to like no technical debt. Technical debt will always be there, but can you maintain it at a level where you can continue the innovation without having to worry about legacy technology that's going to be on the critical path for every change we make, right? So that's kind of like the focus. So business enablement with debt reduction, there is a sweet spot. It's more art than science, obviously, but that's the beauty of the role, right? So,
well, it may actually really be a combination of a lot of science and a good amount of art.
That's right.
And I think you're right. I think technical debt, well, often when we talk about it, we really don't talk about the different ages of it, because technical debt, when you're talking 50-year-old technology, is very different from 10-year-old technology.
That's right.
I mean, a lot of companies, a lot of CIOs will identify a lot of their Microsoft platforms as a big part of technical debt. So we do keep it sort of, I guess it's not the gift that keeps on giving, but it seems like something that's going to always be with us.
And it has to be a cyclical process as well, right? So once you do like these big one-time exercises, can you instrument a process where systemically you're designed to do these refreshes on a regular basis so that you don't have to deal with a lot of end of life or end of support type software and hardware systems, right? So
Now, we talked about a lot of the very leading edge work going on, the innovation in AI and the database, the hyper personalization solutions and your client labs. Is there any part of the way you encourage innovation, kind of part of your innovation ecosystem, that I didn't ask about yet, or that you want to be sure to shine a little light on?
I think the Guild network we talked about, which is actually fantastic because it's open to all of our colleagues. I talked about the interns we have a very mature intern program. So we are opening up new outlets, partnerships, with different academia, industry entities, as well as our clients to kind of like drive that incubation. In fact, some of the interns that were in that hackathon have now expressed interest to continue with us. As they went back to their school, they want to continue with us on a part-time to actually continue to build their prototype ideas that they won the prize for to see the light of the day. So I think some of that stuff, a lot of focus on innovation inside emerging tech as well, through intellectual property as well, and of course, big tech partnerships that I referenced. So I think largely speaking, I think we have a pretty good system set up now that's firing in various cylinders. So you'll see a lot more action from us Yeah.
Okay, great. Are there, let's pivot one more time over to the rest of the C-suite and the board and talk about ESG issues, the environmental, societal, and governance issues that we are all, I think, reading and seeing a lot more about these days. I know that this is an area that you have been very passionately interested in as well for a long time. How is the technology organization helping with ESG issues of any sort?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I see it in like three lenses. One is as a technology leader, I have the primary obligation to contribute to the net zero commitment that we made as a firm. So that
Yes.
undoubtedly is a big priority for my organization. There's a number of initiatives that we do to make sure that we are on track for our net zero commitments. Second is our asset management business, which is Nuveen. As you said, $1.2 trillion of assets that we manage, has been very active, has been one of the leaders in the ESG space, even before ESG became mainstream. So there is a lot of innovative products and funds that we build through our Nuveen. Nuveen is also a big investor in farmland. So there is a high likelihood that a glass of wine you might enjoy actually comes from TIA Nuveen grapes, as we say. So because we are one of the largest farmland investors. So there is a lot of agri-centric as well as ESG-centric focus in our Nuveen products. So there is a lot of product innovation, data and analytics to foster ESG products and make sure that they're governed properly in the current climate. So that's a second lens. Third is just personally as a technologist, it's a big focus area and passion area for me. I've actually been doing a lot of intentional learning and coursework myself in my spare time on climate, and I'm a big enthusiast in climate tech, whether it's carbon capture or electrification or hydrogen and some of the other emerging trends. So I'm a student of climate tech, which obviously makes me fascinated by the ESG space.
Yes. Well, and I'm sitting here a little stunned at you mentioning having spare time, because it doesn't actually sound like you might have a lot of it. But it's just, well, we make time for the things that are most important to us, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Two final questions as we wrap up here. One, what can you tell us about kind of comparing and contrasting between McKinsey, Marsh McLennan, Amex, and now TIAA? How are the workplace cultures different? We've dropped the culture word into our conversation a few times, but I always like to put the brakes on and kind of ask about what does it actually mean? How is the culture different for you at TIAA, or what are some of the highlights that you have brought with you as a leader to TIAA?
I think TIAA, if I look at it, the culture can be defined by its purpose, right? So I think the beauty of the firm is all colleagues are purpose-driven because the company is purpose-driven. The profits are going back to the participants. So I think it's just a very symbiotic relationship in that sense when it comes to colleagues and how they think about their jobs, which is fantastic. So that's a very nice attribute of the firm. In terms of similarities to the attributes of the other firms that I've worked at before, all big financial services firms, and the advantage is, and all of them are 100-plus-year-old financial services. So there is a set of attributes that are very common to any large-scale financial services firm that are culturally inherent, whether it's technology or business. There is the standard go-getters, and then there is a standard set of lethargic elements in any firm that you have to deal with, and that makes the job interesting, right? So I think those attributes, technical debt being one of them as an example that we just talked about, that's the second one. But culturally, I think in the new hybrid, new normal, I think new ways of engaging with each other, that's like really happening, in front of us, right? Every firm is going through that, and at TIAA, we are quite excited about opening those channels of communication. Like Guild Network is a classic example of that, right? Like, for an organization of our size and scale, how do we bring all the colleagues together in a way that they can just collaborate with, regardless of where they are, right? I think some of these things culturally are changing the core fabric, but I would say, even from a hiring point of view, we look for culture add talent so that we could continue to drive transformation of the firm, for the next set of generations that we need to serve. So I think So I think TIA is in that space, and largely speaking, financial services is all going to that. And you can see like technologists at TIA dressed differently. Like it's like even like basic cultural elements, the way we work, our workspace has changed quite a bit. Some of our technology hubs are you may assume that it is a high-tech company hub, and you walk into a TIA technology hub. So we have actually opened up our workspaces in a very different way as well, right? So
good. All right. Well, last question as we wrap up here. What has changed most or has changed at all in your approach to your leadership style during the last 2 years of all of these? I've heard it called VUCA, the volatility in the environment. Everything has changed so much in the last 2 to 3 years. When you look at the way you lead, and what kind of an effect has it had?
I think the main thing that changed a lot for me is listening. I think it's an important skill more than ever, especially when you are in this hybrid format, which we've all gone through. So I think we just naturally make some assumptions, and we have inbuilt perceptions on how the other person is thinking. It's very easy to relate to that when you're in person, but when you're in a hybrid format, I think listening has to amplify multiple times. I think listening is one, and second is being intentional about things. So I think a diverse team, obviously, no question, drives the business bigger and better. So how do you make sure that you intentionally go about it and create diverse and inclusive teams, leadership teams? If you bring a diverse leadership team, then you bring the next level and next level, so forth. So I think inclusion and intentionality, I think, is another attribute. And then frankly, the advantage of this post-pandemic world is it has brought the world together more, right? So as much as internet and social media have done, now I think this kind of forced us to be together. So how do we leverage the global landscape we have? How do we bring teams together so that we could collaborate more and make a bigger impact and leverage the scale better, especially when we compete for talent? So that's the other attribute of my leadership focus that has, I would say, amplified more, during the last 2.5 years. Yeah.
Well, that's a great description of it. And my last Leadership Live 2 weeks ago, I was talking with the CTO at Audible, and he had a very similar answer about listening, but we also talked about the surprising things he learns, like things that, like a situation where he thinks that, oh, the team is going to love it if we do this. And then when he asks for feedback about it, they tell him, well, actually, this is a better way to do it. And
that's right. Yeah.
I think that kind of listening, that speaking truth to power, has become something that maybe I'd like to think it's going on more in technology organizations, even the really great big ones like yours.
Yeah. And I think the role, as I said before, has changed, right? This is the best time to be in a technology leadership role because there is a plus waiting for you.
Yes.
Right? If you're a CIO, there's a big plus waiting for you to make a real business impact, drive new digital business models, earn the seat at the table, and frankly, own the table in some of these situations, right? So I think it's an important element of the CIO job, and it's quite exciting time.
Yes, I love that idea. Earn the table and own the table. That could be your new North Star, right? Thank you so much for joining me today. It's really been a great conversation. I've enjoyed having you here, Sastry.
Thank you, Mary Fran. It's my pleasure.
If you joined us late today, you can watch this full episode later right here on LinkedIn, but also on CIO.com and on our YouTube channel, Tech Talk. CIO Leadership Live is available as an audio podcast wherever you find your podcasts. And I hope that you enjoyed and learned as much from today's conversation as I did with the CIO and Chief of Client Services organization for TIAA, Sastry Durvasula. We will look forward to having our next Leadership Live session with CIO Deepa Soni from The Hartford, the giant insurance company. It's going to be at a little bit of a different day and time. Generally, we are on Mondays or Wednesdays, but this one, due to the holiday 2 weeks from now, You will be joining Deepa on Tuesday, October 11th at 10 a.m. Eastern in the morning. Thanks again for joining us today, and do take a moment to subscribe to CIO's Tech Talk channel on YouTube, where you can find all of the 90 plus previous episodes of CIO Leadership Live. Stay well, and we'll see you again here next time. Thank you.